Alright guys, how you doing? It's Rabea, hope you're all well. Thank you for checking out my YouTube channel for today's installment of some guitar related stuff. In this video I wanted to talk to you about compression and using compressors in your guitar sound. A few of you guys sent me messages actually asking me about this, like where do I find the most use for compressor in my guitar sound, my pedal board setup? You know, what's the use for it? Whilst I'm sure some of you guys are going, well, I know exactly why I'd use a compressor, probably some of you are going, I actually don't know. So let me clear it up for you. In a nutshell, compression is where you take high and low transients and you compress them together so everything sounds perceivably louder. Dynamics become less dynamic almost, in the sense like, for example, let's say you listen to a drummer play and he's playing ghosties on the snare, so he's got his main hit and then he's got all these little ghosties in between. If you use a compressor on that snare, it's going to bring those ghosties right up so you can really hear the detail of what was going on there, but at the same time it's going to sort of squash or bring down the top transient, that first hit, that big loud one, so that it's not so dynamically like bang and then quiet and then bang and then quiet. It becomes more like a, oh, this is a hackable, sounds loud and powerful kind of sound. And in mixing, especially heavy modern music, the stuff I like to listen to, like Sick for example, you know, it's a compressed sound. It's part of the trend to compress heavy music so that it brings all that out. They call it loudness wars because compression is essentially making things sound louder than they actually are. It plays with your mind. So the idea is that you think things sound more loud and aggressive than they actually are because of the way compression is used. Let's go back to guitar related. People use compressors for things like if you're playing funky, soul-y R&B stuff and there's a lot of like rhythm chanking going on, you can slap a compressor on to bring out those dynamics to make things more rhythmical. You can also use a compressor to allow for more sustain, so when you're playing lead and it's a slight, maybe even high gain or cleaner sound, it's going to provide a longer, more drawn out note, which makes things sound nicer if that's the effect you want. On top of which, it changes the response and the way you play. It actually becomes easier to play because when you're throwing your fingers around the fretboard doing legato and chicken picking, all that gets brought out because it's compressed. Therefore, it feels easier and the response of the guitar somehow becomes more hackable to play. So in this video, I've been supplied by the wonderful people at Keeley Electronics a Compressor Plus. Now, Keeley's been renowned for his compressors, the Keeley Modi compressors that you guys know and love. Not only did I want to show you how the compressor works, but I also wanted to explain how it would work if you were using it in front of distortion or a boost. Because with the same theory of it bringing high and low transients together, when you're talking about low gain sounds, like low gain, that little bit of bite, using a compressor can actually suddenly make that guitar sound go way heavier and more saturated. So the Compressor Plus it has 4 controls. You've got sustain, blend, level and tone. And you also got a little toggle switch that moves between single coil and humbucker. I'm just going to breeze over the controls really quickly to explain exactly what they do. So we'll start on the toggle switch. Single coil and humbucker mode essentially changes the attack, which is how quick the compressor affects the sound, but also it's used as more of an output control on this pedal because, you know, single coils are lower output than a humbucker. So those are the sort of 2 ways to look at the toggle switch. And then we'll start on the left. The sustain affects, of course, it affects the sustain, so it's going to affect how long a note can be held for and generally the response on that end, but also its ratio. Ratio in compression terms is for example, you can have ratios of like 2:1, 4:1, 8:1, 10:1, or like 20:1 on your classic 1176 compressors. That's going to feel like when you hit the guitar harder, it actually quietens down more drastically and then brings it back. And that's a dynamic thing, so you'd probably never put that on full sustain because that'd be just way too much, but it's an effect if you want it there. Blend, that's essentially pulling in the effect from all the way over to the left, which is half blend, so that's half the compression effect, all the way over to full, which is everything, and then everything in between. Level acts as volume, so at 12 o'clock it's pretty much unity, so you won't notice much difference, but if you go above, it's going to boost that. And of course it'll boost, if you put it in the front of any amplifier, it's going to start pushing that front end a bit more. So you can use that as almost like a gain control as well. And then finally tone, which is just the tone of the pedal, so adding a bit of high frequencies there if the compression starts to muddy things up a little bit. And that brings me on to my next point, using something like, in this case I'm using the D&M drive because we've got both a boost sort of clon circuit and like a overdrive circuit. That can get quite muddy if you're starting to compress that a lot. So I'll demonstrate that anyway. You can use the tone to bring everything back up again. So hopefully that all makes sense. Let's get into the demonstration. Using my 61 artist-inspired custom shop Strat. The reverb you can hear is the Specular Reverb 2 by GFI Systems. Let's go. Immediately you can hear the effect. I'm going to do that again. It's subtle, but what you might have noticed is that those rhythms start to pop out a little bit more, and that first attack note actually dips in volume because of where we've got the sustain set. I probably wouldn't have had that much sustain if I'm playing rhythm stuff. If I'm playing exclusively lead, I'll push it up so that it brings out all the nuances. So let me start by demonstrating a funky chord progression. So now if we put the compressor in, you should notice it dip in volume a little bit before we boosted the level, and also the rhythm nuances start popping out more. Hopefully you can hear that. It's rounding things out, it's dynamically pushing things down and bringing the lower stuff up. So I'm going to boost the level and knock off a bit of the sustain to get more of a natural sort of compression sound. Backed off the sustain and blend, boosted the level, so this is without, and this is with. So it's immediately easier to play lead on because of the way that the response is changed by the fact that it's making things smoother and the response better. But if I go back to strumming chords without it and back on, by boosting the level, backing off the sustain and blend a bit, what it's given me is just a more solid, thicker, clean sound for strumming. Let me give you an extreme example before we move on to how you'd use it with drive and boost and all that kind of stuff. So. It feels really good to play. Like I was like hanging on, but the idea being is that it's just, you know, the rhythm stuff and then the lead stuff. You think where it'd start dropping out on such a clean sound. I mean, that that characteristic for a clean amplifier. It shouldn't be that compressed naturally. Clean amplifiers aren't normally compressed because compression comes in when you start using gain stages, and because otherwise the clipping of nature of an amplifier would just be so intense that you have to have levels of compression to tame everything. And that, you know, when a good amplifier is well compressed in the high end in terms of a high gain amplifier, because it's not overbearing, harsh, shrill or anything like that. But try plug in like a Fender, you know, custom reverb deluxe or whatever it is, you know, amplifier. It's deafeningly loud on a clean because the headroom is maximized by the fact there's very little compression going on because there's no need to. There's no overdrive in the circuit. So yeah, basically that's what a compressor does. And I could mess around with it for hours and just be chanking away some funk, but let's get on to the meat of this video by the fact that I'm going to show you what happens when you put a compressor in front of a overdrive or boost. So, I'm going to keep my settings as they are. Hopefully you can see I've got the D&M drive down here. This is what it's like without. Let's pop it in. So I'm just going to boost the level and I'm going to boost the gain. So this is the way that the D&M drive is going to sound before we compress it. You can hear a very, very slight amount of gain. Now watch what happens as soon as I press the Keeley in. Check out how much more gain we're going to have. It's a weird thing because it's psychosomatically saying, wait, there's more gain. There's no more gain. It's just that it's pulling the dynamics closer together, resulting in what sounds like more gain and sustain. Now, if I was to push up the sustain and blend, you'll notice that you'll get even longer drawn out sort of sound, and you might even hear a little bit more of a squelch. So it might actually sound less gainy, but we'll show you. You see my point. You're boosting the sustain, you're getting way longer of a note. You boost the amount of blend of the compression, you're getting way more of that effect. So you're almost getting a little bit more of the gain, but you're most certainly getting more sustain. So that's really, really why you would use it in front of something like a tube screamer or even an overdrive. So let's do that now. So I'm going to reset the controls, and again, D&M drive, got the Dan side. Now that's quite intense amount more gain. Now if I put a compressor in front of it, first thing you might notice is there's less of a shrill quality. And we're getting way more sustain out of the pedal, and generally it smoothens things out and it's going to make things easy to play. I'm going to boost the level a touch, I'm going to boost the sustain a touch back off the blend. So there you go. That's what happens when you put a compressor in front of any kind of drive sound. Immediately the response is easier to play. One thing I should point out is that if you are using a compressor, it's obviously bringing high and low transients up. So as you can hear now, I'm still with the D&M drive on. But as soon as I turn the compressor on, it's bringing up low transients, meaning the hiss level is louder, as you can hear. It's brought it up a lot. So that's something to bear in mind. You don't want to take it over the top too much if you are using a compressor, because that will happen. Something else that I wanted to point out is that using the single coil humbucker mode, as I said, on the Compressor Plus, it's going to be giving you a different level of output. So if you do want to push it a little bit further with your single coils, you can throw that in there to boost a little bit more. So here we go, this is without. This is with on single coil. And then this is with the humbucker. So there you go, that's what happens when you use a compressor in front of a boost or a distortion pedal. And I hope I've cleared up a little bit of information there about compressors in general, the effect itself, and how you can use it in a guitar application that isn't just for sort of clean chanking and funky stuff, as fun as that is. So it's been really good to use the Compressor Plus. Thank you to Keeley for sending it over. This particular compressor is £129, and you can get that from Anderton's. I'll put links in the description box. But I like it because it's straightforward, and you've got the option of a single coil and humbucker mode, as well as just being able to blend in the effect as much as you need, mess around with the essential controls that a compressor has, and I think it does a good job. It's also been nice trying it in front of something like a D&M drive, just because you've got a Klon TS style pedal on one side, and then you've got your like full-on overdrive, you know, Analog Man King of Tone style pedal on the other side. So you do get a nice demonstration of how a compressor works with both those applications. So yeah, I hope it was helpful and insightful. Once again, thank you all very much for watching. Please like, subscribe and share. And if you want to, there's a little bell symbol next to the subscribe button that gives you notifications whenever I upload a video. So if you want to see more, please hit that button. Comment in the comment section. See you all very soon.